Good morning. It's very, very glad to be with you this morning. I am Artis Pruitt, and I'm sitting in or pitch hitting for Brother John Small and Sister Rochelle from the Trauma Center Ministry, and we're sitting in for them this morning. We're going to present a short teaching, a short message for you this morning. And we're very glad and very pleased to be here. And we want to thank Brother John and Sister Rochelle for allowing us this opportunity to come before you. And we're going to call your attention this morning to the book of Joshua. And we're going to read from the first chapter, and we're going to start from the first verse, and we're going to read several of these verses for you. Now, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your feet shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and the great sea towards the going down of the sun shall be yours. There shall not be any man able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shall thou divide unto an inheritance the land which I swore unto their fathers to give them. The first 6 chapters of the first 6 verses of the first chapter of Joshua, a very familiar study and reading now, I would think so, for most biblical students. And from this particular readings, and the chapter 1 and 2 also, which we're not reading at this time, we want to just use for a thought this morning, standing on the banks of tomorrow. Standing on the banks of tomorrow. Standing on the banks of tomorrow. Not yesterday, not even today, but standing on the banks of tomorrow. Yesterday is past, today is today. What will happen tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is based partly on what has happened and what is happening now. Yet the vision points forth the next day. But we live today. We lived yesterday. With God's grace and mercy, we will see tomorrow. And all we can do at this point is stand on the banks, the tip, the edge of tomorrow. Someone must always stand on the banks of tomorrow. That is to say, someone must have a vision for the people. Someone must see a future for someone. And someone then must move toward that future. For to stand on the banks is one thing, but to move is another thing. And as time moves, so should we. Therefore, we can't live in yesterday. We can only live for today. We really can't live in tomorrow. But we prepare and anticipate tomorrow. For with God's grace and God's mercy, we will see tomorrow. And all we can do at this point in time is stand on the banks of tomorrow. The beginning, the end, the transition. There was a beginning to this process as Joshua led Israel to the banks of the Jordan River. The process and the transition was long, 40 years in the making. And now they are near the end, where they can look over just about the banks of the Jordan and see the promised land. Anticipation. And with that anticipation of the project being almost completed, we always have a certain amount of hope. There is a fear as to what can go wrong and what may not happen. There is faith that the God of Israel, our God, will provide and will take us to the next step. What will happen tomorrow? The sun will come out tomorrow, says one song. In other words, they anticipate that there will be life and hope and destiny tomorrow. A life to possess the promised land. And it took a lifetime, mind you, 500 years in the making for Israel to eventually derive at this point. 500 years. The last 40 years, well, they spent the last 40 years wandering in the wilderness. How many years of your life have you spent wandering? Not going anywhere in particular, just moving around aimlessly, wandering. A journey that could have took less than 2 years, but they spent 40 years. But the wilderness was the place where they could get lost. The wilderness was the place where also they could be refined. But the wilderness was the place where they could get that vision and hold on to it. Therefore, old folks would say, how did you feel when you come out the wilderness? And as they enter the end of the wilderness period and they move toward the Jordan, they stand on the banks of tomorrow. Yes, Joshua had been with them from the beginning. And as we look at the Bible, we see this transition. We see the beginning of a change as we go into Joshua. For this will be the time when they actually enter the promised land. And from this time forth, there will be constant change and transitions. And we will go biblically from Joshua, where the tribes will possess the land and be dispersed. And then we will go into a period of judges where each tribe will have its own leader. And then eventually we will go where the last judge, Samuel, will appoint the first king. And we go into Samuel and then into Kings. A sideline, we will see the book of Ruth. As we look at the social life of the Israelites in the inheritance land, in the promised land, with a sidetrack to the book of Joshua, dealing with that, basically. And Ruth will focus on the social life, and the sidetrack will be to Rahab, who will be found in the book of Joshua. We look at this standing on the banks of tomorrow, and we realize that mankind have always looked at themes that suggest the past, that suggest the present, and suggest the future. themes that invite our invitation, invite us to look and wonder. I think about some of the old soap opera themes from years ago and some of the titles as I was thinking about this. One of the themes and one of the titles was As the World Turns. Think about that for a minute. As the world turns. Another title of one of those great soap operas was Search for Tomorrow. As the world turns, I will search for tomorrow. Another thing was the guiding light. You have to ask yourself the question, what are they talking about? What is the guiding light? Another one of those soap operas was The Edge of Night. And then one of my favorite, Days of Our Life. But they all pointing to a time sequence of past, of present, of future, of looking for something to happen, anticipating something to happen, and wondering what happens. Is there a God to our life? Does the world turn? Does it evolve around us? No. It evolves around the God who's on high. And as we live out our todays and I look forward to tomorrows, then we live on the edge of night, and we realize that God is the one who's the days of our life. And we look at this as Joshua leads Israel to the foot of the promised land. The interesting thing about this, and as a sidetrack, as they got to the foot of the promised land, Joshua must send out spies to survey the land, to determine the status, and to see what's going on, basically. And he sends out 2 spies, and they are to go to the home of one named Rahab. And they went down across Jordan and found Rahab at her tavern, at her inn, semi-hotel, her house of ill repute, the house of the rising sun. And that was supposedly where Rahab had her business. But she was there and one of the first persons that they met. But what they found out from her was the fact that the enemies, knew about Israel's plan. They knew the history of Israel. They even had information about the God of Israel. They remembered, Rahab did, some of the particular battles that they were involved. And there was a long, drawn-out history of Israel and her God. And the reputation of God and Israel was profound. And the spies were impressed as they listened to this woman tell them their history. And what I've seen through the years is sometimes sinners act like they know more about God than we do. We walk around sometimes we're supposed to be children of God, and we have to have somebody else explain to us what God can and will do. Is that right? And so they were impressed by Rahab, and you know the story. You should know this story. Is that they made a deal, a contract with Rahab, that if she would help them, that they would allow her and her family to be saved. And so this was the deal, as they were to return to Joshua and tell him all that has happened. Moses, the great servant, at this point in time is dead. He can only see the promised land from afar. He went into the mountaintops and view the promised land. He was not able to go there and cross over. But Joshua would be given the task of leading Israel across the promised land. Joshua and Caleb were the only two old-timers that remained from the original journey to the promised land. If you remember your biblical history, they were part of the 12 spies that Moses had sent out, spies that had been ordained by God to review the land and determine the status of its inhabitants and see if the land is what God had promised, that there was fruit, plenty of wild game, and the land was fertile. The spies were to determine this and to look after the inhabitants and to see whether they be strong or weak. Oh, but if you remember the story, they brought back an evil report. They brought back a bad report. Brother Moses, we have surveyed the land, and it is in our sanctified opinion that wherein we are strong and we have God on our side, we cannot possess the land. For there are giants in the land, and we look like grasshoppers. Yes, there's fruit, there's milk, there's honey, there's wild game, all of the things that God has said, but we saw the sons of honor. And there were giants in the land, and we look like grasshoppers. You can stand on the banks of the Mara. If you keep and have a grasshopper view of yourself, you might as well stop standing. You're not going anywhere. Christians with grasshopper view hop around, but they never get anything done. Yes, they appreciate green grass because they ain't got to do nothing. But when the grass dries up and it's time to go find some new grass, when it's time to hunt for food, they don't get nothing done because they're not going to do it. This was the image that the Israelites had of themselves. But Joshua and Caleb, at that time, almost 40 years ago, told Moses, told the Israelites, we ought to possess the land. Is not this why we're on this journey? Haven't we been marching through this wilderness, going toward this promised land all these years? Haven't our prayers gone up to God that He would guide us and show us the way? Hadn't He provided food for us and water and pointed us in this direction? And now that we're at the foot of the promised land, you, spies, don't have the nerve, don't have the power that want to go in. You don't have faith in that this same God will carry you over. And so God said that this generation will march in the wilderness until such time as all of them are dead. And I will rise up a new generation, one that will trust me and one that will move toward taking the promised land. Don't let God have to kill you. If you're not going to possess the promised land, move out the way. If you're not going to cross over, don't stand in the way of other folks. We got too many churches that's standing in the way of Christians. We got some churches that's standing in the way of sinners. Understand what your role is. Standing on the bank of tomorrow, moving in the direction that God has told you to go, doing those things that God has shown you to do. Oh, you must have a vision for the people. You must have that vision coming from God. A vision that allows you to stand on the banks of tomorrow, knowing that He has promised that the sun will come out tomorrow. He has promised that if we make one step, he will make two. He's promised that. He promised us that if we knock at the doors, it will be open. He's promised us all of these things. Accept him at his word, accept him at his promise. A new generation is given the chance to possess the promised land. Yes, they were to possess the promised land, the physical aspects. Through the years, God would add and explain the spiritual dimensions of the promised land. Eventually, we would associate the promised land with heaven, the new earth, the new heaven, the new Jerusalem, and all of the glories, the psychological, the mental, the moral, the spiritual, and physical aspects that will be wrapped up into what we would call everlasting life. That would be the ultimate goal. But here, he gives them something physical to see. He gives them something that they can put their hands on. He gives them something that they can identify with. He gives them the beginning of a process. He gives them something that will lead ultimately to his son. Yes, Joshua knew how to fight. He knew when to fight. And he knew how to follow the rules. He knew that, yes, there's always a fight in this Christian life. But there's a time when you be still and see the glory of God. This time, Joshua, it won't be like it was when Moses led you across from Israel through the Red Sea. It won't be quite like that, Joshua. This time it will be a little different. All you got to do is march and do what I tell you to do. And when the time comes, you march around the walls. When the time comes, you blow the horn. All you got to do is follow the rules. Yes, sometimes we have to fight, oftentimes. But a lot of time and every time we have to learn what the rules are and follow the rules. Sometimes we fight when we don't have to fight. Stand back, sit back, and see the glory of God. Watch what I will do. That's what he tells them. He tells Joshua and the Israelites, see me do, as you say in Isaiah, a new thing. You haven't been this way before. You haven't seen this before. This is a new generation. How then can we accept and live in God's blessing? The first thing we realize that God himself is the real blessing. People always talk about a blessing from God. God is the blessing. If you have God, then you are blessed. Period. Period. You don't have to add anything to it. That don't mean that you can't pray and ask for specifics. That's fine. That's what he tells us to do. But if you have God, then you are blessed. Blessed assurance, Jesus of mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heard of salvation, precious of God, born of his spirit, washed in his blood. This is my story. Standing on the banks of tomorrow. Yes, Israel would eventually leave and cross over into the Jordan. We live between yesterday and tomorrow. We live this day, not yesterday, not tomorrow. The past is for reflections. We may revisit it, but we cannot live there. We hope for and envision a bright, glorious future. One of the problems Israel is, yes, you can reflect. You can remember how good God has been to you. But you cannot go back to Egypt. You cannot go back in slavery. You cannot go back to that lifestyle. One of the great lessons in Old Testament teaching concerns the wife of Lot. For she was given one commandment. The angels of the Lord told Lot, get your family. We're going to destroy this city, Sodom and Gomorrah, but we're going to take you and your family. We're going to take you to safely. We've got just one request, one command. Whatever you do, don't look back. Or you can glance ahead, yes. You can reflect just a little bit. You can remember just for a minute that this is where you were. But the looking back that's recorded here is a deep reflection, a deep anticipation, a longing not to leave, but to go back and live there. You can't long to go back because your heart, your mind, your soul is there, Miss Lot. You might as well go back because everything that's important is in the past. Don't look back. And when she did, she turned into a pillar of salt. Israel, therefore, would learn these lessons and must move forward. You can't go back. And so two spies gave a good report when they first came to the land. And Joshua and Caleb brought that good report. And they were on a mission for God and declared that we should move forward. But at this junction, Joshua and Caleb remembers this. They remember the grace and goodness of God who had kept them all these years. Aaron, the great high priest, is dead, and Moses only recently died. God allowed him to glimpse into the mountain to see the promised land, but not cross over. Therefore God would tell Joshua, Moses, my servant, is dead. But you, Joshua, stand in his stead, stand in his place. Take the old man Caleb and lead the people on the vision that I gave you over 40 years ago. You know the way to go. I will show you through my guidance and spirit. A lot of times it's not because we don't know what to do. It's not because we don't know how to do it. It's just a matter of us being motivated to do it. People always say, well, the church can do this. Yeah, they can do it. You know it. You know what it takes. You just don't want to do it. Yeah, you pray about it. You sing about it. But what are you going to do about it? Some folks do everything within their power. Then some people do everything within their power. They negate or go against everything in the power that the one that's doing it. Where's the vision for the people? Where's the vision for the church? If we stand on the banks of tomorrow, then we are aware of what has gone before us. If we stand on the banks of tomorrow, we know where we are now. Oh, but tomorrow gives us hope and gives us something to long for. And if by chance we don't make it, somebody, follow me now, somebody will catch the vision. Somebody will grab the vision and take it on to the next generation. If you can't carry out the vision, you ought to be passing the vision along. You ought to be teaching the vision to somebody. That's why I love the story when they talk about grandma and grandpa, the vision that they had for their grandchildren. They knew that their life would never get any better from them. But they always prayed that their children and their grandchildren would live a better life. And that was always the prayer coming through the ages as grandma and grandpa would ask God to remember these children who are going to the promised land of Mobile, who are going to the promised land of Birmingham, who are going to the promised land of Detroit, of Cleveland, Chicago, of New York, as they go to these cities who are seen at times as the promised land. Open those doors for them and be with them. Somebody always have a view, a vision of something that would be called a promised land. It's just amazing as believers we accept the divine promises to some extent. We definitely accept the divine blessings. But the question is, why should God bless us if we will not use them? You said, well, Brother Pruitt, you mean to tell me somebody got a blessing they not use? Bless us with that job that we would die for, as we say. And then we don't want to go to work. Give us that house of our dreams, and we don't want to keep it up. Give us healthy bodies, and we don't want to take care of them. Give us a wife or a husband that's a darling, and we don't care. We stand on the banks of greatness, but just don't want to cross over. And so the athlete, great as he may be, is lost to drugs. The great scholar quits school. The great minister leaves the church. All because they cannot continue and accept the divine vision of God and guidance. They refuse to make that one step for God. And the blessing formula is real simple. There's nothing complicated with it. You make one step, I make two. 1 to 2. But what do? We make a half step. But the blessing says you make a step, I make 2. It don't say nothing about half stepping. So if you want the blessing, make the full step. Make the full commitment. Moses and his series of final sermons leading up to his death record a number of sermons in the book of Deuteronomy, and titled those sermons Looking Back, Looking Forward, Looking Up. Looking back, reflection. Looking forward, anticipation. Looking up, looking to the God, the anchor, the one who controls the back looking and the forward looking. He's preparing the nation for changes that they will encounter in the promised land. Even at this point, Moses anticipates the division of land, the government changes, the ritual ceremonies, and all of